In the summer of 2022, Victoria and I bought a house so that we could relocate to the north end of Western Washington. This house came with some very unique problems, one of them being some overgrown Douglas fir on one end of the property. I say that they're overgrown, although that they were healthy trees that were located in a position that was extraordinarily dangerous if there was going to be a large windstorm. Because these trees were in a straight line, they provided no protection to each other in the event of a large windstorm. If wind had come from the appropriate direction at a high enough velocity, the likelihood of one of these trees falling over was quite high, and it would incur a monumental damage to either our property or our neighbor's property. So the decision was made to bring these trees down. Because this type of work is out of the scope of my abilities, we hired a local tree feller, who also happens to be a friend of ours, to handle removing these trees. As you can see, the process is climbing up, limbing the trees down, and then slowly dropping them in sections. Now, the way that we had this project executed is a little bit different than this company typically does, because I requested the requirement for them to drop them in between 12 and 14 foot segments, so that the next stage of this process would be us milling up lumber out of all of this wood. Typically, trees that are felled like this on a property will be ground up into mulch and then cut up into firewood, and the firewood will normally be picked up by locals who want firewood or donated to a charity. But in this case, I felt like that is a large waste of a natural material that I am going to use very frequently, and that be, Douglas fir lumber. I use it all the time. So my thought process here was, if you wanted to have something be locally sourced, I don't think you can get something more locally sourced than in your own backyard. So if a lot of the building projects that I'll be doing over the next year could be built out of wood from the backyard, I feel like that's some kind of victory for the environment, right? Like, this wood didn't have to come from anywhere. It didn't have to be shipped around anywhere. We didn't have to burn any fuel to do to ship it around. It's not going to be kiln dried. I'm actually going to be drying it outside. So there will be some unique parts to this process that are, I think, valuable to learn as a person in the construction industry. I don't think that a lot of people in the construction industry even recognize what goes into felling lumber, choosing lumber, drying lumber, all of that stuff. So I think it's a valuable lesson, and I also think it's valuable to not waste this wood and just turn it into smoke in somebody's chimney. A few interesting things happened with this project, one of them being the amount of mulch created. We actually had them take 3 loads of mulch away, and we kept 2 loads of mulch here. One of the reasons for that is we were able to distribute it into our flower beds. We were able to distribute it into our raised planter garden beds to fill the bottom of them, and basically have a lot of compost material also. So that became quite useful, although the amount that we had was a lot more than I think we probably expected. Another hurdle that we had to deal with was some of the logs that they left us on the ground, not cut for firewood, were actually too big for the mill that we utilized. So they actually did have to return on a third day to cut up those logs into firewood. And the main reason for that was just to adhere to the previous contract that we had signed and paid for. And they did it with really no gripe. It was oh, shoot, very sorry about that. We'll come up and we'll cut those down. I probably would have cut them down myself, barring the issue, but I don't have a chainsaw with a bar on it that big. I don't personally own one that large. Some of these, two of the trees' bases were over 44 inches in diameter. So those parts of the logs needed to be cut down. Unfortunately, I would have loved to turn those into lumber. The downside is the mill would not accommodate logs that big. And as you'll find out in the follow-up video to this, to the milling process, I don't think we would have been able to get them onto the mill. Needless to say, Marcus and his team made this a wonderful experience to get these trees down. It opened up a lot of light to the yard. It also relieved us of a lot of worries for potential damage and safety for the property in the future. And there is the final added benefit that I didn't mention earlier in the video, and that has to do with I'm eventually going to build my shop right where those trees were. And now we actually will have the space to be able to accomplish that in the future.